Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to episode 2 of What's Spinnin'. Here with Brett Kelly, our good friend Mitch Hall. Oh no, I wanted to do it.
Okay.
Sorry, say your name for the.
No, you said it. The time has passed. You did it.
We often like to fight to see who can talk first. Anyway, welcome back. Episode 2, What's Spinnin'. We are way more excited than the first episode. A little less nervous.
Maybe you are. I'm not. Like the nerves are still here again. So I don't know if this will keep going every week, but definitely.
It'll be fun. We'll figure it out.
Just pound some more caffeine. That'll help.
Yeah, we're in the exclusive podcast studio here at 45Drives.
Yep.
Fun fact: this is a 90-degree turn of the Tech Tip studio, so real efficient with our space here.
Very efficient.
Storage company, deduping, if you will. But yeah, so episode 2. What are we talking about today? Well, we have a guest joining us.
Our first guest,
a friend of the pod. Friend of the company, just a general friend overall. Yep. Tom Lawrence from Lawrence Systems. He was gracious enough to join us here for our episode 2 of the podcast. I've said episode 2 enough, in case you didn't know. And anyway, he's going to join us in about 10 minutes' time. So we're just going to riff a little bit before we get started. But no, when he gets on, we're gonna talk about Tom. We're gonna ask about Tom's origin story. We're gonna say how he got started in this business. I'm sure we have a lot of concurrent listeners.
Themes,
yeah. So
it's funny. We're so used to being the ones that are being interviewed, so it's going to be a very unique experience doing the interviewing. But Tom's such an easy guy to talk to. It'll be really good.
He makes it easy.
And I'm like super interested to find out how we got his start in all of this, because like he's a really unique guy, I think, in the YouTube tech creator space, because he's an MSP, because he started as a business. Actually, I think he started in corporate like tech, and then kind of moved on to his own company.
That's why I'm really interested to ask him just a bunch of questions on it.
And then of course we have that common open source love, which is just, it's kind of what brought a lot of the creators together with us. So it's going to be a great show. Can't wait to interview him for sure.
We're going to interview him, go through it, and like Mitch said, we always get to be the people being interviewed, so it's nice to do the interviewing. Hence, I wore my Hotline shirt today.
Hopefully we'll get him some of the interesting questions that he's never been asked before.
Hot questions by Hot. I got to work on that. I'm sure it's trademarked too. I'm sorry.
Hot ones.
I didn't steal that. Anyway, we got some time to kill.
Yep.
So before we get started, I mean, like, we got a lot going on here, Mitch. You got anything you want to share with the world? Anything?
There is a lot going on at 45 Drives from day to day, but it's funny you should ask that, because I do have a couple gears to grind here, so to speak. Now that you ask.
What grinds my gears?
Yeah. We might turn that into a segment of what's grinding your gears. So, but no, for real though, like, obviously I'm very close to the support side of 45 Drives, and I really do feel, especially now after seeing what other vendors do for support and what the status quo is, that we offer some of the best support in the business. And so over the last month, a running theme that we've been hearing a lot is, obviously we work as storage for data stores for VMware, for ESXi, and a whole lot of customers, right? ESXi is ubiquitous in the market, a little too ubiquitous if you ask me. It'd be nice if we could get some of these guys over to Proxmox, but we understand that that's just not realistic for people. They have their
the inertia of change is very hard.
Exactly. It's hard to do that, right? But that's a whole other topic for another day. But what we're seeing a lot is people going to VMware for help, right? Whether they had a blip, an ESXi, the server was locked up, something happened. They go to VMware and they'll say, hey, can you help us out with this? And VMware will have very rigid, like, okay, well, can you give me some logs? They'll give them logs. And many times it's like, oh, it's not verbose enough. Do you have anything goes back earlier? If that's a no, it's almost like a wash our hands of this. Sorry, we can't help you out.
It almost seems like it's an internal thing of like, find a way to kick the can down.
Find a way to be able to just say, we don't have to help you anymore. And that is so foreign to the way we do things.
Well, we see it all the time. One of the opportunities we saw is we hate vendor hate, right?
Exactly.
Like we come in and everyone's, it's the storage. No, it's the virtualization. No, it's the capture software.
Yeah.
It's everyone. And
who cares what it is? Let's just solve it.
Yes, the customer in the middle is just, please help me.
Exactly.
So we try to fight that by, I don't know,
just saying yes.
Yeah.
It's
trying to get along, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because that is exactly it. Like, obviously, we've got specialists on our support team, and we've got a lot of really talented people, but you can't know everything. And there's going to be some issues where we just don't have the answers right away. But one thing that we always do is we always are going to fight with the customer, not fight with them, fight for them, and work with them right to the very, very end. And we're not going to leave them hanging, right? And just seeing vendors that'll just be like, sorry, we can't help you. It just really grinds my gears. So yeah, it's interesting, and it makes me want to start supporting more than just the storage side of ESXi and VMware. So who knows? Maybe we'll see where that goes in the coming future. But yeah,
it's always been a common theme. I remember ended up in you go and you help someone, and I remember one customer in particular who bought a Gloucester cluster from us way back in the day.
Yeah, way back in the day.
And then they ended up switching to some FreeNAS stuff. Anyway, we solved so many problems for him. The guy just whatever issue he had in his system, it came to us first.
Came to us first,
and
even
just
though
tried. And then so it was just always that was the
look who
our
we
culture.
got.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, I guess I got to throw my headphones on here.
Headphones.
Oh,
We're rookies. We're rookies here. We're
I
learning.
like the set.
Thank
Nice.
you.
The set looks great.
Like Brett said, it's our Tech Tip studio just rotated 90 degrees.
Yeah,
It's
no, I'm
literally
looking
the
for.
same spot.
I've had so much, many things going. I haven't really had time to really like set down. This is one I don't come out there just yet.
Yep.
But I do want to come out there and like see it because you guys you've done a great job of setting it up. So.
Oh, well, you can definitely send that praise off to our man Chris, who's behind the camera there.
But yeah, I was gonna ask. We whenever we're ready with open arms.
Yes.
Whenever you want to come up for a visit.
And now that I can move both my arms.
Yes, true.
And fall is coming in quick. It's beautiful up here in the fall for sure.
Oh yeah.
We have something
Yeah, I
called the
love
Cabot
that
Trail.
whole. As I've done through the through New York and some of those areas like upstate New York. So
Oh, fair. Yep.
I
Very
love
similar.
it. Yeah, definitely. I enjoy that.
So
It's the last thing you get to enjoy before I lock myself in and hibernate for winter.
Yeah, for the winter.
That's how we work,
exactly.
too.
Pretty
Yeah.
much. Yep.
No,
Absolutely.
I've got family down in the mainland. So where we live, we're up on an island, and then my family's down in the mainland, Nova Scotia. The same thing. After the fall, they're like, "When are you coming back?" I'm like,
I'm not.
I'll see you in the spring."
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, Tom, thank you for joining us on our second episode of the What's Spinnin' podcast.
Yep. I can't think of a better person to be the first guest for our podcast. We love what you do. I feel like we got so much in common. So thank you so much for coming aboard.
No, you guys are awesome. Are we starting right now?
Yeah, we're live. We've been live for.
I know we're live already.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We've been live for about 15 minutes before. We were just chopping it up a little bit.
Oh, it's better than just touch on that real quick. It's better than Linus got me one time that way. Called my cell phone
my God,
looking
I
for
remember
service.
that. I was
I was like,
there.
Linus, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back? He goes, well, we're filming right now. It's like, oh shit.
It's like, so you kind of put me on the
Yeah,
spot then.
but I guess okay.
But yeah, no, we were just chopping up a little bit about ESXi and VMware and some stuff we've seen lately of people just like VMware just stonewalling customers saying, sorry, we can't really help you, and things that should be able to help. So just one, like I was saying earlier, is like they had an issue, right? And fine, they didn't have enough logs to help them, but the customer was then just like, well, can you at least take a look and make sure we got all best practices and our storage and everything is set up right? And they still were just like, no, sorry, can't help you. So anyway, it's just been a whole thing, and I feel like we should start helping out on the VMware side a bit.
Well, yeah, and I've actually seen, it's worth noting because it's not hard. The register has been full of their usual snark articles. And they've been harsh, but I think they should be because they were talking about internal emails from VMware, like what the employees seen of how this merger is going to look, and it doesn't look great. It's kind of like just gutting the company, I kind of feel, and VMware's been passed back and forth. I also want to bring it up because we see a lot of it because we work with other open source hypervisors, just like you do. So we're seeing the migration going, what are we going to replace? What are we going to do instead?
Exactly.
That's a common topic that comes up, not just of my audience on my channel, but in the consulting work we do. We've done some we had one of them, I think over 2,000 VMs that we migrated across quite a few hosts. I mean, they were a VMware shop. They're big.
Yeah. Where'd you move to? Proxmox or XCP?
No, you know it's XCP. Yeah. We're the Proxmox evangelists. He's the XCP. Either way, I'm happy they're off. Yeah, I know. But no, actually, I did a video a while back on migration of VMs, or even migrating an entire server from ESXi to Proxmox. And it seems to be actually picking up a lot of steam lately. People are really thankful for it because it's a really efficient way to move over either one or many VMs very, very quickly and kind of decommission the ESXi server. So it's cool that at least that ESXi supported it. I think it's the, what's the standard? I'm blanking on it right now. Anyway,
we'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's an open source standard anyway.
Yeah, the OVA files.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yes. The Oliver Lambert, who runs XCPNG, he actually wrote a really cool tool, and it's free. It'll migrate. You actually connect it to your ESXi server.
I love it.
And it'll do all the migration for you. It grabs all the VMs. It does all the steps.
Now that's some marketing right there.
He built a lot of automation around it. And I'm like, that is just too cool.
Yeah, that's brilliant for sure. So
know your audience.
Yeah, know your audience.
We've got a whole lot of questions that we want to ask you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we were going to do first was just kind of talk. Who is Tom? What's your origin story? What had your adventures in the world of everything tech and IT? And
we were looking at when you got started. It looked like it was like 1995, and Brett said, "Oh, this was only a couple of years before I was born."
Yeah.
So after I was born. Yeah.
I almost feel like it should start like 407 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been so long. And it's weird to me to think that the 90s, that's not even 10. That's now 20 years
I know.
ago.
Isn't that so weird?
One of my employees, it's funny because he was born the year a year after I graduated. So it's like, okay, this is this is definitely, there's an age gap that is like, oh, that's right. I was out of high school.
Yeah, we're hiring
that's
people.
How I hired him.
Yeah, we're hiring people.
Went to high school with his mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is interesting though, because you like the jump of tech from the early 90s to the early 2000s to the it's massive.
Yeah.
Now everyone's coming through and they're so used to just kind of endless compute and memory and everything. You had to learn to solve some problems interesting
back
in
then.
the day.
Exactly. And what we're finding, or not, what I found, at least anecdotally, is a lot of the younger people these days, tech has always just worked so good for them. There's never been a whole lot of troubleshooting that they've had to do because everything just works. They got their iPhone. It's always been rock solid. So the troubleshooting comes a little later afterwards.
Yeah, and the constraints of tech. One of the reasons I love a lot of the retro channels, or I was at the Vintage Computer Festival, which is a lot of fun, and I'll watch some of those really old things. And I just tweeted the other day, I don't know if you've seen it, about SCSI being the USB of the 90s.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that retro stuff because we were so constrained on what we could do. So everything was about pushing the limits. How can we get this? It wasn't just overclocking. It was, we were working at the compute limits because I actually started my corporate career in 1995 because I graduated high school in 94, but I got luck, landed a computer job working for a small little computer shop, but we were still fixing, you didn't really break down like whether it was a consumer thing or a business thing. Pretty much you were either a nerd into computers and you were the nerd that knew how to work some of the computers at some of the businesses, which were, even at the time, some of those old IBM 386s were still a thing, 486s, even though Windows 95 had just come out. 46s weren't as dominant. People kept technology for longer cycles than they do now.
Yep.
And so you were always like, what can I do to optimize this? People were still using Lotus Notes and things like that, the old DOS versions of it.
Yeah.
So you would always, the way you had to adjust the batch files to get the most of the memory out of there because this person had a big spreadsheet they had to open.
Yeah, it's true though. It's funny, like when you have endless possibilities, I don't know, it's harder to innovate and do stuff when you've got clear constraints.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I have to solve this problem and I only have 2 paths. I have to get creative. Like the stuff you'd see in the old the programming wins of like old Game Boy games of like the assembly code they had to put in there to get optimized. It is unbelievable. Yeah.
I started with 3.1. Windows 3.1. That was my kind of introduction.
Well, and if you really, we were discussing this when me and my friend Jason were talking about that new WebP vulnerability and how the big challenge has been created because programmers have gotten really lazy. They're not working in constraints anymore.
Exactly.
So they're like, so a big hoopla started with one of the tools we have. They do not render images in this tool. It has no way to render WebP, but we know the people that wrote it. And they basically grabbed this fat framework that has a million features they don't use. They don't prune it in any way. They're like, which dependencies do you want? I don't know which ones I need. So I'm going to select them all. So
grab them all.
10 times bigger than it needs to be. And of course, that means they have WebP in it. But it's a web tool for remote access that doesn't render images. It just does screen sharing. So now they're getting flagged for vulnerability because embedded in the framework is this, and it's kind of so 180 from when I started, where everything was trim out everything you need. What can we do to compress this more? What can we do to break this down to the assembly language? So it's kind of interesting having that much perspective from 1995 and being active here in 2023. You really have these large scale differences between how things were constrained to the sloppiness we have. I'm always blown away how big games are versus like Doom was like,
even the last couple
so
years
optimized.
Games are just like ballooning.
Good for the storage business.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the Doom thing. That's always the joke too. Like someone at like they've got Doom running on an oscilloscope.
God, yeah.
I remember doing that, and then so those days they're fun. But you got a job in corporate America for a little bit, and then you ended up leaving and joining the wonderful world of entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Yes, the accidental entrepreneurship.
So that's
interesting.
accidental.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
So you have this concept in your head, and this is so where I talk to a lot of techs. That's why we have a second channel where I talk a lot about business problems, because a lot of people think I hate my job as a business plan. I would completely admit that. This place sucks. They're having trouble. I'm going to start my own business because I'm tech, and people know that I know things, and that would be enough for them to hire me. Turns out that there's like a lot of other aspects running business and marketing and actually getting customers that are really, really important. Now, I was lucky because, I went from working for a couple small mom and pop computer stores, landed a gig in corporate, starting in 1998, which I was actually working 2 jobs back then. I'd spend the mornings working at the the afternoons working at the mom and pop shops, and the mornings working working at the corporate job.
Okay.
And it's really that's why there's like this weird overlap. If you're looking at my LinkedIn, there's like overlaps in the times I say I worked places, and like I worked 2 jobs. I was pretty much obsessive and worked 90 hours a week because what else did I have to do? That was always, and I love technology. That was always my deep hobby. So like, cool, I get to play with really cool things over here and networking and manage a business, and then I get to fix gaming computers at night. And so it was like I'm best of both worlds and just hang out with everyone. But the corporate job was a lot of fun, a lot of responsibilities of it, and they grew rapidly from a small company to when I exited, they were doing, and this is back in 2003 money, they were $44 million a year in revenue.
Yep.
My budget for IT was $1.2 million that I was signing off on, and I was in my 20s. I was a little full of myself. Definitely that. I was paid really well. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm responsible for $1.2 million that my signature does. And, while I had a lot of success, I burned through a lot of that capital launching my company.
Right. Yeah.
It went really, really quick from like the money I'd saved up through payroll and things like that too. I ended up selling vehicles I had just to keep things afloat. It got really bad for a while. So it wasn't all
wasn't an overnight success.
Yeah, but that's a common story. Like that's a common story. The whole like, I'm gonna start my own business, and that's hard. Yeah, it's very hard to be your own boss. But
everyone has that aspirations, right? I was like, I want to be my own boss. I want to do my own thing. But man, that's a big risk, number one, and number two, it's a lot of work.
But it must be rewarding when it pays off, because you've got Lawrence Systems, and you're going through a merger right now, or have already merged?
We finished the merger, and it went really, really well. So now I'm on this like next chapter of my life. So I ran Lawrence Systems for, that started in 2003, and it still legally exists because it's a merge split. Okay. And I'm trying to figure out, maybe I'll break this down on the Business Technicalities channel. Some people have asked, and I have no problem talking about how we did the deal, because I got to write my own deal, and which is not the always the opportunity people get in. But because there's such a massive content library that I have, and it's owned by my legal name, Lawrence Systems, which, by the way, I'm not clever at naming companies. They're like, what are you going to call it? I'm like, I don't know my last name, because someone said it sounds like Lawrence Tech, the university. And back when I worked in corporate, they had stuck that on my door as a joke, like Lawrence Tech. We just, whenever something breaks, we knock on Lawrence Tech's door. And it was, and there's a Lawrence Tech University here in Michigan, so it was kind of they're an engineering school, so no real conflict of interest. But with the content library and all the leads coming in, the business kind of became, for me, one, really good, but also a little bit unmanageable. We were hitting some growth problems that would have required me to put more of a business hat on. And that's when I approached my friend Jason, who's the president of a company called CNWR. We've been friends for a while, and we think a lot alike. And he's also got a deeply technical background. I mean, you start looking him up, you're like, wait, are you the guy who wrote a book on Chef and Puppet and all this other stuff? So he's got and found several CVEs. He's a security researcher, but he put the business hat on. And I said, you chose the business path. I don't want to choose that. So let's do this merger where I retain 100% of my rights to all of my content. I become a content producer. Essentially, there's a non-compete. Lawrence Systems doesn't do the consulting now, but I also am part owner of CNWR, but just not in a leadership role. No one reports to me, and that is not by accident. So now I get to create all this fun content. We're just 90 days past the merger, but I still participate in, like, we have an all hands meeting this Friday. We do a couple of them a year, just to address the employees. So I get to kind of float around the company and be this person who makes some content, talks about projects, how they went, then makes some video about it. We're so excited because you already know, like, we just bought another petabyte or 2 of storage from you guys. Then that's all going together with a 100 gigabit network. So there's a big pile of stuff that I'm gonna start filming on Friday for, which I'm, super excited about. And then that's I get to do the fun things. I get to talk to all the employees about it, but I don't have to do the, I still do consulting, but I do it under the CNWR brand with the merger, which is fine, because now if someone said, did they pay their bill? Not my problem. I want them to pay their bill, but we have an entire department and people just doing the machine of that. People just get a calendar link for me, and I do the part I do, and someone else takes care of, like, all the business aspects.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I will say,
landed my dream job.
Best of both worlds, and that's it, dream job. So congratulations on that journey, because there's a lot of people who start that and don't get there, right? So yeah, that's awesome, man.
And I imagine, the content probably leads to a lot of customers as well, right? Where you kind of have that merger. And I imagine a lot of business flows through the YouTube channel, I would assume.
Yeah, I'll hop into the next question that we wanted to go into is, like, did you always have it in the strategy to become a content creator, or did that kind of happen accidentally as well?
It's serendipitous is the way I would describe it, because I love public speaking. So I got good at and learned Linux in the Linux users groups that I started joining in 1997, I think. The college, University of Michigan is not far from here, and just adjacent to there was the Washtenaw College. They all shared some campus area, but they had the Washtenaw Linux users group. So I joined that right away, and it was great because I was like, oh, look, a bunch of Linux enthusiasts. And I also was lucky enough, Ann Arbor being a college town had a 2600 meetup. That's actually the book center behind me, is the old 2600 Hacker Quarterly. I've been a long time reader of that, and I just naturally gravitated, I don't know, I call it show and tell of, hey, I did a thing, let's talk about the thing I do, because you get better at it and I can share my
100%.
enthusiasm. So I never had a problem getting up in front of people as long as it was on a subject that I'm good at. And so I was a public speaker for a long time and just kind of went through the ranks of doing that. But then eventually, as I went to bigger events where there's like 1,000 people, sometimes there wouldn't be, you know how they break out all the different panels at some of these events, and they're like, oh, I can't, can you put that on YouTube? I wasn't able to go to your talk because there was another talk at the same time.
Got it.
I could probably do that. So I got these firewall videos that I started putting on there. Then that led to, at the time we're doing retail computer repair. I seen people, iFixit had just started, and I'm like, hey, they do videos of teardowns. I should do videos of teardowns. So I would film some of the teardowns. So you'll find old laptop repair videos that my techs would do. And as it just kind of slowly ramped up and me doing more and more, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of views on this. Wow, there's a lot of views on that. And so I just kept going with it, I did not expect that many people to want to hear me talk about firewalls, but it turns out there was a demand for it. So I just kept leveling it up from there, and people would randomly hire us for things. And then other people that were smarter than me at business kind of watched a couple of my videos and said, if you just put a call to action in there, like it suggested that people hire you, it probably changed things a lot for you. And I'm like, that's a really interesting insight. And I think my first 400 or 500 videos never had any call to action. It was just me dumping information on the internet. Then I started saying, you can hire us. And then I would do the video. And that's where we're at today. I just have a little lower thirds. I don't push it too hard. Sometimes I have a little bit of a pre-roll I put in there in some of the advanced ones. But through that little tweak, it turns out, and I hold nothing back. One of the important things to me is that I always give you the entirety. I'm not telling you, here's a basic overview, hire me for the actual how to do it. Nope, I still dump,
if you want to do it yourself, I'll give you everything.
Yeah, we always felt the same way. The ones we 100%. Made, our early day production video quality was lacking. Chris and I, what did we do? We stuck a GoPro
GoPro and snowball.
GoPro and a snowball. How do you do a screen cap? tape a GoPro to a screen. Like,
Yeah.
we made videos like that.
But oh, go ahead.
Anyway, all I was going to say is we did the same thing. It was
Yep.
info dump. It was like, hey, everyone, look at this cool thing we learned. And then, same thing. Boss man came around and was just like, come on, Brett. Give him a call to action.
Call to action,
But I agree with the point you were making there. The thing that we always liked in videos that other people would make is that, they're not just teasing me. Like, they're
actually
giving me
it to
just
you.
enough information to feel like I can do it, and then I'm like, but you draw
a
the
last
owl,
piece.
right?
Yeah.
First draw the 2 circles, then draw the rest of the owl. Like, no, give me the middle, give me the meat. That's what I'm here for.
And it's
Yeah,
funny.
and-
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say this is why I'm friends with a lot of the other creators that I collaborate with from time to time, like Jeff Geerling. Even I think Jeff does a great job because he does these really cool videos where he leaves a slight bit of detail out, but then he links it to GitHub and gives you the entire write-up. So, which is I think is also fine because he's like, I'm not going to walk you through step by step on the Docker config, but you can download it right from my GitHub. Perfect. And I do that occasionally too. But it's a whole important thing, like you said. There's not a teaser here. This is start to finish. My goal is if you watch this video, if I say it's how to set something up, that is the goal. You should be able to follow this and set it up. And if you don't, let me know in the comments what I missed, and I can be additive to make sure your journey is complete by getting this done.
And you mentioned the early firewall videos that you did where you're like, I didn't think anyone would really want to watch this, and you realize that they do. And I find the best content that we've had always come from something similar where it's like you go out to try to learn something and you're not finding anything good, and you have to like go through the fire and really figure something out because there's not a lot of great content on it. And you're like, I'm going to put a video out about this, and like that's the because like if you had to go through it, there's other people that are doing the exact same thing, and they're going to thank you so much when they come onto your video and be like, this is exactly what I was looking for, right? It's that kind of content is so powerful.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm trying to leverage here is when I do the videos, I have a little bit different perspective than some of the people who go, I'm just a content creator. Because if you just do content creation and you don't have the business side of it attached in terms of like the production, for example, I did a follow-up video and I'm actually working on a couple more of these, specifically one about 45 drives. Like we installed a petabyte of storage. I did a video on it. What does it look like a year later? What does it look like a year and a half later of production use? And this is where the challenge is, I'm holding a flashlight. Someone wants to review the flashlight, but unless you've bought 1,000 of these, handed out to 1,000 people, and they've tested it, and the failure rates, then you have a better perspective. And that's one of the things I'm trying to bring is some of this follow-up knowledge. That's why I spend time interacting with the staff and everything else. I watch the tickets for progress of a project. I watch if a ticket pops back up on a project we delivered, even if it's 6 months later. Hey, is there a problem with the way we did that implementation that I should also update my video? Well, now I know. It turns out it seemed like a good idea to do it this way. 6 months later, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, and the enemy sometimes is the end user.
Yeah.
And so the end users did it very different than expected. So here's how we changed to adapt to that. And I love bringing that to the table as well.
That's a great point. I think there's a few videos we could probably revisit there and come back with it and say, here's some even more insight that we've gathered since then. Gives me some ideas. So thank you on that. That's a great.
Oh, yeah, especially because you guys do so much storage consulting as well. And there's always tweaks. Like you set it up the way you thought they'd want to do it. And then you're like, well, the users had a new idea of their use case and their implementation. And you mentioned in the Forbes article, like Moonshine. And, that's one of the examples where also we have a common client because we help them build their network. You build their own storage. And they're great people to work with.
Oh, big time.
Did they send you shirts, by the way?
A couple people have shirts.
So,
Because, we had a couple techs go down there. And
they're the nicest shirts. Yeah. I love their shirts. My staff is always like, get more Moonshine shirts. I don't know where to get them from, but boy, they're soft.
More swag's always better.
But before we move from the topic of content creation, you touched it with Jeff Geerling. He has got such an art at making an entertaining tech-filled video, but still keeping a good story
But
on
not going
it.
too deep.
When we did our creator summit here back in August, that was a very helpful critique he gave us. He said, you guys, you do great stuff, but you're missing some story. Like you need, and so I commend people like you and Jeff and all these people who've got such a good way of cutting the meat out. Because it starts off with a cool idea, and then we just info dump.
Yeah,
and
next thing you know, we're an hour deep into the video, and
So at first it's like, this is easy. I'll just tell them everything they need to know, and then it's 20 minutes of me hacking around on the terminal or something like that. So
there's a list of books too that Dark Knight Diaries list. If you go to darkknightdiaries.com/books, there's a list of them on there. One of them is called Out on the Wire, and it's essentially kind of this narrative storytelling that you'll find that Ira Glass does with like This American Life.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot more about that. And I listen to like the Out on the Wire podcast. It's just a handful of episodes and a series of workshops that walk you through how to build narrative around something and how to design that storytelling. Because Jeff does, as you said, he's a masterclass in that of taking a technology topic. I mean, I can brain dump. That's the easy part. Once you figure out okay, I know how to put this out on camera, but then actually going, how do we make it interesting? How do we bring the story? How do we have a hook in the beginning of it to give me the first 5 to 10 seconds when I say, in this intro video, why should you watch the rest of this video? And I'm covering that. I just got back from Vid Summit. Actually, Jeff Geerling was there, and so was Network Chuck. And, a lot of people talked about how you get people's attention, how you make things align, and even the packaging of your content was talked about a lot of the title and the thumbnail. One, it should make them want to read the title. It should make them want to click the thumbnail, but it has to deliver on a promise. YouTube was very clear about this. Their new system they're rolling out is going to be all about not click-through rates. That's a lot of times what people want to measure. Oh, they clicked on it because my title said, "You won't believe this thing."
Yeah,
and then
clickbait.
There was my mouth was wide open in the video, so I look shocked. But then the thumbnail doesn't deliver on the promise. So if you click it, but they stop watching it 30 seconds after they click it, you have a misaligned promise of what they were expecting on there. So I've been thinking a lot more about that. So it's not just the storytelling style, it's how you package the entirety of your content. And it makes me feel less bad because Jeff said he spends sometimes an hour thinking about a thumbnail, and it just seems like a lot of time in the process. And I said, yeah, I've started to spend a little more time, and sometimes I said good enough and cut it off, and I realized I should stop doing that. I should really keep thinking about it. And I've been going back slowly and retitling things. Jeff actually still does this. Even content he has that has maybe a lot of views, he'll go rethink it and go, that title could be better. I actually think people are searching for it. So yeah, revisiting old content. I couldn't find something, and I retitled a video this morning because I wanted to send somebody something, and I realized when I searched it, I couldn't find it the way I thought I would. So I just retitled it to the way it should be, and I'm like, why did I title it like that 6 months ago? No idea.
I didn't even.
Hopefully it takes off again.
Good to know.
Right. Well, there's a couple questions that when I was looking around at some of the maybe lesser known facts about Tom Lawrence that I was looking into, there was a couple of things that I saw. One was on your bio that was interesting to me that I wanted to ask you about, and it just I think it's on your actual website, but it says about 2 patents that you have pending potentially. Anything interesting in there?
Yes. So when I worked in corporate, I learned a lot about. I worked on actually 2 patent pendings and 2 National Science Foundation projects. They were really interesting. So the company had a lot of money and a lot of connections, and I was just running all the time doing stuff and coming up with ideas of how we could do something different. I had a lot of freedom, but that freedom led me to ask some of the really obvious questions going, why do we have a fleet of 500 plus trucks with satellites on them? And why do they call it? We know where they're at, but we don't have it integrated. So we have them calling dispatchers to explain where the trucks are. And it seems like something you could automate. And this is circa 2000, by the way. And so calling was expensive. A huge part of my budget was we had those Nextel phones that we give it out to. I mean, those were expensive. So a huge part of our IT budget, actually, it sounds great to have a huge IT budget, but a huge part of it was just a cell phone bill. That's what cell phones cost back then, 20 years ago. And I said, I bet we could save on all of this. And so we started working and hired some developers, and we built this. The first one we had was called the auto arrival system. Now, the way you have to calculate this is actually you figure out where the trucks are, and this is common things on Google Maps. Remember, this is 2000. This is before Google. We're still printing things on MapQuest. There's no navigation. Maybe the TomTom was out. I can't remember when that started. I don't think it was 2000 though.
Probably not.
I worked with Qualcomm. We first started a company called Terrion Tracking because they were a startup that we used. They failed, and we then took our technology to Qualcomm, who was established. We had to design routing systems to figure out where the trucks were, where they were going to be. Obviously, there's no real-time traffic data, but it would auto-update all of this information. Now, the other challenge, we had to work with Brand McNally to get a mapping system because you couldn't just base it on something like MapQuest. We had to map it on where a 53-foot trailer and truck could go, which is not normal routing. But we worked it all out and built this whole automatic arrival system, and then we had a patent pending on it,
That's-
because it actually sent out notices and everything else. And it was only a provisional patent. And I learned that patents are won by people who can defend them. And thanks FedEx, who later won the patent.
Yeah.
FedEx started with their tracking and arrival system. They were first, and they did that. So that was the first one. The second one was calculating fuel based on idle time of trucks off the satellite data. You pay highway use tax based on how many miles you drive in each state, but you pay it at the pump, and then you get a refund for all the time your truck idles. Turns out there's a way to track that with satellites, and I had designed all the systems for that. So that was another project that I did. It was
Both
kind
of
of cool.
Those things are really cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff.
Yeah, it was so we could get tax rebates. It was one of those questions people said, "Did you know when these trucks idle, they're not supposed to charge us use tax?" I said, "That's interesting. How do you
Yeah.
get that information?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "We don't know. We can download it out of each truck, but it's hard." And I'm like, I have an idea. If a truck pings in the same location because they leave it idling for so much time, and then I started designing logic, then I hired the programmers and we built it, and that was another one. There was a bunch of other little side projects. I had so many fun adventures when I worked there designing, all this stuff. I used to automate all the form. We had some of the first form automation for hiring drivers. For every state you operate in, you have to have the driver fill out certain forms, so they're repetitive. But people used to just print them back in the day, and they would just handwrite all the forms and said,
Yep.
I got an idea. I know how to do MS Access programming. And I wrote a series of things there. No patent on that one, but I had all these cool automation. It was just kind of neat because we were a tier 1 supplier for Ford. So we were, had what they call the Ford Q1 flag, which was a big deal to get. But when Ford visited our place to give us the Q1 flag, they looked around and they said, "You're a pretty big outfit here. Where's everybody at?" And they're like, "Automation." And
Right.
we had automated thing after thing after thing, including the way we did bill of ladings. So we had a staff 1/3 of our competitors that were running sometimes less freight than us, but it was huge amounts of automation I built. And like I said, the budget to be able to build it, they let me hire developers in 2000 on a whim that some kid in his 20s would be able to figure this out. And
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounded like they gave you a lot of freedom there, which is just awesome, especially for someone with a lot of drive and enthusiasm. It's something I can definitely relate to here at 45 Drives. Like, I came in here as the enthusiastic guy that wanted to do everything, but with a whole lot of skills to pull it off. But I've never been told no, right? And so, like, every step of the way, everything I wanted to work on or thought we could improve on, like, it was always just, yes, go for it. And so it's definitely rewarding to have a company that, gives you that freedom.
Yeah, it was interesting because one of the other things that distinguished us, because much like the tech companies being built by people who quit working for someone because they thought the job sucked, like, I'm going to start my own company. Most of the trucking companies were built by, I'm sick of this guy telling me where to drive my truck. I'm going to go run a business to tell people where to drive their truck. The guy who ran the business had an MBA, I don't think he ever drove a truck, which created some animosity with some of the drivers, but he was also extremely forward thinking of how do we do things a little bit different. And we became pretty much stars in the Ford supplier network to the point where he would give talks himself on things. He was a smart guy, and he realized technology. He says, this is the way the future is. If we do this with technology, I don't have to try and figure out how to hire more people. I can automate things better. He goes, and this guy just seems to know how to do it. And so he just leaned on me on that. He goes, you just seem to figure it out. And so he always banked on me, and it cashed out per him pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
You had some questions too about
Some cool things you found.
Oh, some fun. Yeah, we'll stay on the theme with the hot ones. I was looking at, you have a really cool stat line on the website, and it's number of cable length run and everything, but there was a cool stat of, I'll spare you the number, but it was essentially 9,900 million Scoville units eaten. Didn't realize you were such a spice guy.
Yeah, so we had a few videos on it that we posted. We realized they're very off topic for the channel. The algorithm kind of punishes you because as much as I'm a huge fan of hot ones, love that you got the shirt on there. And I got all the way up into the Reaper peppers for a while. And then I said, I slowed it down after I got to Reaper peppers because there's a point of no return of flavor in doing the challenges. And I'd done them all. And sometimes they start tasting bad. I'm like, I don't want to do ones that taste bad. But yeah, I can definitely, and it's not just me. Several of the employees were all the same. We would just keep going crazy with it. It was just so much fun. We would even go to our employee outings were going, what local restaurant has laid down the gauntlet for a challenge if you can't eat this? And one of them was so bad, like they thought they had some hot stuff, and we're like, they were asked to sign a waiver. I'm like, I'll sign a waiver, whatever. That part's fine. And we made a bet. I was like, I bet I bet he can eat it without even drinking water. And they're like, no. So like sometimes like the restaurant manager, the owner would come sit with us at the table, and we do it, and they're just like, I didn't make it hot enough. I'm like, oh no, it is. Trust me, we're trained professionals.
We're professionals.
This is like a hobby for us now.
Yeah. It's funny though, because the same things happened here. We had an idea just to do the Hot Ones challenge with the employees at work, if anyone wanted to jump in and try. And we've done it twice, 3 times. Well, 3 times if we want to count me and Techno Tim going head to head at the Creator Summit. But it's fun. It's a great little bonding experience, because at first you get a couple people who are into like, I'm into Spice, and then some people watch it and go, okay, maybe I'll
try the first couple.
And then everyone's running around, sweating. It's a real bonding moment.
Because, you can get the whole kits from Hot Ones, and that's what we've done a few times.
That's so cool.
But definitely love it.
I did it once. I did the bomb, and never again. Never
that
again.
was
That is not for me,
it's
man.
chemical warfare.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
We've got 2 guys actually on Brett's team, R&D team, and they're not human. Like, it's insane.
One of them especially. So Josh from R&D, he goes through them all, no problem. But you can see he's red in the face. You can tell it's affecting him. Mark, he eats them
scary.
all, and
Literally, it's like it doesn't even affect them. There must be like genetics or something, because nothing. It's so wild.
Some people are more tolerant of it. My favorite is the people who aren't. But one of my friends, retired Marine. And you're talking about a guy. He's got to be stone faced.
Yeah.
Man, eating with him is just so much fun because he tries to stone face it. He can't. It's like he just keeps turning a different shade of red.
Yeah. Same as shade of red, and I just sweat. I was like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine." Like, you look like you're struggling. I was like, "I am." That's the point. It's fun.
It's euphoric fun though,
Yes,
sometimes
exactly.
too to do. So it's definitely. There's just kind of a fun to it. You build up a tolerance to it quicker than you think if you do this enough. One of our other people, he watched us do it because he never had spice. He's like, look, pepper is considered like as spicy as we go in my family. We're like, I'm sorry, dude. So he's worked up to it. He actually enjoys it now. He doesn't do anything of the crazy, but he likes some hot sauce now. And he's like, it's something he's like, this is actually a little better than I thought.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I love that you have the stat on the website.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool
the
stat.
fun.
And then the cable run is pretty funny. Like, what, you guys just add
we
up
gotta
all
really
the cables?
update that. Yeah, we do so much of that, and I don't cover it enough, I think, because it's that kind of comes down to I don't want to use the word laziness. It's just like choices. Do I want to do more cabling videos, which there's so much more production time into them than like the video that's going to be uploaded today is about DNS testing for different malicious websites. I loaded up 8,000 websites and a bunch of DNS tests. This is actually kind of a follow-up to a video I did in 2020. That video took me less time to produce than one video about cabling that I'll have like 20 hours of production time into. We do so many of these large scale projects, but I want to do an update on some of them. I've really sat down. I just bought some more equipment I'm gesturing because it's off camera. It's over there. So I can do more filming of these things. I haven't, now that I feel like I've handed off my company, I can now just go to where the jobs are being done and just film a bunch of it and spend the day putting it all together. I want to get back into doing that because there's fun watching how we cable things, how we assemble these buildings. And some of these are 200 or 300 drop at a time that we go and do. So there's, I don't mind teaching people about that aspect. It's just harder to teach about because
a lot of work goes into that.
they're multi-day jobs. That's the biggest thing I would say. They're like 5 times we visit there over. One of them took 8 months because of delays with the general contractor. So we do our part, then we wait for someone to do their part, then electricians, maybe drywall comes through, but we just got wires hand wall. Then after we drywall, but before paint, we got to come in and terminate, and then stop again, and then building comes through and builds the desk. One of the videos I have, in our older videos I have on there, they had to frame in all of the desks, like all the different cubicles, but not put all the panels on them. So we could come back again for the 4th time, pull wires into there, and then they would terminate them, but then leave these little things in the plates. So then the furniture people could come back and snap them all in. So it's
just
the joys of construction.
The joys of construction.
You said something about your video that's coming up, and you said it's about DNS and malicious website, and it just jogged something in my mind about our home lab launch that we've got coming up here pretty soon. We've got a list of applications, I guess, that we're going to support out of the gate. So we're using, obviously, Houston is going to be the default UI, but we're also using Portainer as kind of the orchestrator for all these containers.
I love Portainer.
Yeah, it's great, right? Maybe someday we'll develop something for Houston, kind of to be fully ingrained. But Portainer is just such an awesome product.
Yep.
Whatever gets the job done, right? That's whatever's that's the name of the game with open source. But yeah, so Pi-hole is going to be one of them. We're going to be using WireGuard for sure as well. I don't know. Did you ever do any content on? I know you did definitely WireGuard, but on Pi-hole, I don't know if I've ever seen anything there.
So here's a fun one on YouTube. I have friends that have gotten in trouble in the past for doing Pi-hole videos.
No way.
And it's luck of the draw. Even this malicious website video that I'm working on, I show none of the websites and I show none of the URLs or even IP addresses. I have a couple of tech friends that do investigative work, cybersecurity, and by showing like the malicious URLs or even a Bitcoin address, YouTube grabs content on the screen and sometimes flags it and goes, oh, you're trying to actually tell people to donate to this Bitcoin or get people to go to a malicious website. And the Pi-hole one's a fuzzy one because if you start talking about just in general ad blocking and instructing people how to do it,
Google,
that's against their terms and condition.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a touchy subject, so I just generally avoid it because
Gotcha.
I'm like, there's enough written tutorials out there. I don't need to risk having my channel disappear and fighting with YouTube over trying to help people on Pi-hole.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the ad blocking thing. I actually saw something on Reddit yesterday, the day before, someone running Chrome, and they had ad blocker installed on YouTube. And I see that they're warning people now. It's like you can watch 2 more videos, and then you'll be blocked from YouTube unless you'll uninstall the ad blocker. Yeah,
Exactly.
so they're starting to get pretty heavy-handed with that, which is interesting.
Yeah, so I avoid it as
Premium.
a topic.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
I mean, I've been a YouTube Premium subscriber now for like a year. I love it. What I did is just I moved away from Spotify, and then YouTube Premium comes with YouTube Music, so it's a good trade-off for me.
Same.
Yep. So no, pretty cool. But yeah, I'll definitely check out the DNS video. That'd be pretty cool.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of Home Lab, we said it's this week. We were saying the store is going to be alive, so we can purchase Friday of this week. It'll be up for purchase. Anyone who's done a deposit with us, will be first in line. So if they come in and buy, they get prioritized over everyone else.
Sure.
We got a massive amount of people interested in this. It was, we were expecting some good numbers, but it went even higher than we thought there.
love it.
We're gonna there'll be communications following post store launch of when you can expect delivery and everything like that. But it's gonna be pretty exciting.
We'll have to get you one so you can play with it.
They're on the list. He's on the list.
Yeah.
You're on the list.
I'm excited because I'm going to, my studio's at my house. That's one of the things that I'm going to shift to using for all my studio stuff. That's why I'm excited. Portainer on there. I like, there's 2 different ways to go. Do you go with appliance where you're locked into the way they decide to do it?
Yep.
I think home labbers there's some that want that. It depends on where they're going, but I think there's a lot of people too that go, oh no, I don't like locked into an appliance style. I want the freedom to load whatever I want. I like that you guys are choosing that because Docker's is going to be for quite a while. One of the easiest ways to get applications deployed. It's efficient. There's a lot of good reasons to do it. Get your storage mounted, throw it in there, and now you can have everything live on one place. Like, cool. And Portainer just makes that web management easier. I wish they wouldn't call it stacks. It makes it a little bit confusing. It's really like, why don't you just call it the compose window?
Yes, I know.
Stacks. Well, it's
That
just a
confused
fun
me as well.
buzzword of like, what's your tech stack? What's your stack? Because everyone's got the dream of stacking microservices on
All together,
microservices because it's so much fun.
But it's a great point of the freedom, the mix between the people that want to just do their thing and then also giving the ability. So like when we were coming up with this, we thought, of course, there's going to be the people that they don't even have a plan to run what we are putting on. We're running with Rocky Linux, right, with a desktop environment. They're going to go in, they're going to install whatever OS they want, whether it's Proxmox or XCP or Unraid. But then there's also the people, Temple OS, of course, that's obviously high on the list. But then there's the people, right, that have been a 45 Drives fan for a long time, but they they're dipping their toe into home lab for the first time. They want to get into it. So we want to make it as easy for them as possible to be able to spin up a lot of these applications. And really, we're doing documentation side by side with everything. So every application that we're supporting, we're going to document. Obviously, there's lots of documentation out there, but we want 45 Drive specific where you can kind of get everything in a one-stop shop. So it's going to be it's a really exciting launch. I can't wait.
Yep, me too.
That's huge for any open source projects like that. It's just having the good documentation for it. I realized too, someone pointed out that there's still a little bit of a gap in XCP-ng in some of their documentation. So I'm making sure that's I've been outlining a really good in-depth start to finish one on there, but I've also been diving into Proxmox a little because Jeff from Craft Computing just released a Proxmox pass-through video, and that's a common use case, and I want to kind of dive into how to do that even in XCP-ng, but I also want to test Proxmox more because it's just got some neat features of how it does things.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Absolutely. Well, what else we got on the docket today?
What else we got on the docket? Well, we'll transition into from the home lab into the kind of new enterprise side. I'm not supposed to lean away from the mic. I'm a rookie, remember.
Rookie mistakes.
But we got it's a new podcast, right? So we're trying out different segments or sections, or a new segment brought to you by something, right? We'll get our sales guys to get us some sponsors at some point.
Yeah.
But we want to try something called, we like to talk about what we call quote unquote war stories.
Yeah.
Those stuff that you've seen, whether it was something you came into to consult and fix, something maybe that you did at first or we did, and like, oh, that didn't work out, and then this journey of like, I don't know, some people coming in and being like, I know I shouldn't have done this, but I built a 45 drive VDEV, 45 drives in it. I've lost 3 or 4 drives. What do I do? It's like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So
we've got lots, and I'm sure Tom has lots.
With Tom here and your long history, and we focus storage mainly. We're expanding that, but you have touched all aspects of technology. So we were wondering if you could share any fun war stories that you've experienced, fixed, solved, walked away from, anything in your past.
Yeah, because I also will have one to share afterwards, which is a pretty funny one.
You know, it just dawned on me because it's I don't remember if I maybe touched on it in a video, but it's one of those, the other company that we were merging 2 different knocking down walls to merge this larger building. The active company was supposed to move upstairs, but they didn't completely move, and they left their servers down there. And I've never seen this done, but it was amazing because it worked. They needed to put the flooring in for the new company going in downstairs, but this giant 2 racks, they had trusses in the ceiling, so they hoisted up the servers, and they were dangling with ropes, kind of crooked, but plugged in and working.
That's what I was.
And all the wires went up into the ceiling, and everything was just, it was like duct tape and rope and everything. I mean, whatever the construction crew could find. And I'm like, it's amazing because, and I went upstairs. I'm like, is everything working up here? Like,
no downtime.
No downtime. And I was like in kind of an awe. Like, it's also in our way because we need to wire stuff in this building, and there's these, but they're just dangling, and I'm staring at them. I got a picture somewhere. I've shared it on Twitter. It always gets popular, but I'm like, they lifted up the rack and then just put a floor under it.
It's not crazy if it works, I guess.
My Lord.
Yeah, not crazy if it works. But of course, they've now delayed, like they're supposed to move it out, and another company just didn't. So now it's still not a problem yet. So no one's fixing it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious.
That's a good one.
It's a scary problem that someone went under that to get a floor, because I mean, the UPS is at the bottom alone probably weigh 200 pounds.
Oh my
so
God,
like,
yeah, easy.
Yeah, there's racks of drives in this thing, and these are all old Dell servers. So there's like
the old sands that are just 1,000 pounds
from ropes. I was like, that's not OSHA. This is
right.
This is a work hazard.
That's hilarious. That reminds me of
scary.
the one we did, that one on site we did, and then we had to move the switches. But the switches were so darn heavy, and they weren't like bolted in at the time because they were temporary.
Yeah.
So one of their techs, we were like, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, I know what I'm going to do. And he grabs an Ethernet cord, same idea, wires it through, ties it to the top of the rack, and then we move the server down, bolt it in, everything's fine.
Oh, yes,
Remember that
yeah,
one?
I know exactly.
Same idea.
Yeah,
now, that
was
wins, because that was racks. This was a switch, but still funny.
No, we actually did one. So we built a server for search and rescue.
And they were trying to bolt it into
the
search and rescue van. Yeah, but they didn't like have a rack, and what they ended up doing, I don't know, it scared me because it was like probably 60 pounds worth of storage server, and if you
Go around a tight corner and someone's sitting there, I was just scared of that thing coming out. But anyway, they said it'd be fine, but I never ever heard back, so maybe no one died. But no, they're search and rescue. They can handle it, right? They can search and rescue themselves.
Yeah, that's funny.
But no, the one that I was thinking of, and it's actually, I feel bad more than anything. We get a lot of consultations that come in where they kind of roll their own things, or
Maybe they even, get support from a freelancer or something, and they'll come in if something's not working. And we got one recently that I just felt so bad for these guys. They built I think it was a 14 node Ceph cluster,
all NVMe, very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think they rolled it themselves, and I think they're a hosting company or something like that. But they built it, and it was up and running. And as they started to put load on this thing, it was just falling apart. It wasn't performing. They had no idea what was going on. So they called in, asked if we could consult with them. So, we're starting to ask them questions, and everything sounded right. Like the hardware was great. They were using like Ryzen consumer CPU. So it was like the 5950Xs, so non-ECC, but not the end of the world, right? Like it should still work and everything. So everything sounded right. And they said it was all NVMe. So we get in there, and the first thing I look, there's a bunch of consumer NVMe, so like Samsung Pros. So they sound fancy. They're called Samsung Pros. So, why wouldn't they work? Unfortunately, consumer NVMEs are just absolute terrible for Ceph because they have those F-Sync write calls. And so essentially every write has to get flushed from the cache back into the flash. So what you'll end up seeing is you take like a Samsung Pro, you
do a F-Sync benchmark with FiO. It's about maybe double the performance of a HDD. So it's about 2 hard drives where you'd expect it to be hundreds of thousands of IOPS. So I had to break that to them that they're going to have to replace all their NVMEs if they want anything. So that was a pretty hard pill to swallow for them. And then the fact that
it was in production, right? So now they went and they got all the NVMEs, but now they have to swap one node out at a time very, very slowly. And because they were already like skirting the edge of these VMs even being stable because the performance was already so bad, even when they would remove 2, which would be in one node, that would be enough to even make things even worse because recovery would start happening. So they were in such a tight spot, man, and I just felt bad for them. But I guess that's why you gotta make sure you're getting the right stuff up front.
NVMe, man, it's Wild West right now.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yep,
it is.
Yep.
Like we do take. Everyone loves saying spinning rust is dead, but I mean they work pretty reliably, and
we've seen the
trust
standards
and SCSI.
It's trust and SCSI. We even got that USB backplane now. Actually, Wendell brought one for the Creator Summit. He was showing off. So just like a little enclosure. Oh, sorry about that, guys. USB-C backplane, right? And just plugs right into the computer. And really, really cool. Just thinking of it as like a direct attached storage to be able to, as like an extra JBOD onto a server. I took it home because Brett bought one. I took it home recently because I had to offload 20 terabytes or so. Man, it worked beautifully. Not a blip. I offloaded 20 terabytes and then loaded it back up. Worked perfect. So really interesting little piece of kit for sure.
Yeah, that it's interesting what you can do with consumer hardware, but you have to know before you buy that many NVMEs where there is. It's not like they're just robbing you and charging more for these other drives.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not an arbitrary. We stuck the enterprise name on it and doubled the price because we can double the profit that way. It's not how that works.
No,
there's
not.
so much more nuance.
There's a reason why they exist. Exactly.
Oh, we got some messages on the chat.
a couple good ones.
Any questions?
We're gonna have to make the text bigger.
The text too small, is it? What do we got? A lot of file system work. Just a lot of
A
comments.
lot of comments.
Cool.
What
right.
was I gonna say though? I don't know. It's gone.
Well, we're coming up to an hour here anyway.
The black arts of performance tuning. That's the topic. I brought this up at the Creator Summit as well, just talking about how long does it take to resilver, where because I'm shifting around a bunch of stuff and where we with the merger, I have a bunch of freed up hardware, including the 45Drives that I got in production for you guys. And so while it's going to be changing its purpose of what we're going to be storing on it, I can mess it up. And so I'm actually
you're gonna start doing some tuning.
We're going to load a bunch of data on there and just see how long it takes to resilver because, it's only 30 drives in there, but that's still interesting for how long does it take to resilver one of these and start making the times, how much data. And then we can artificially triplicate the data so we have even more on there, and ask the same question again. Let's pop a drive out, blank it, put it back in. How long does it take to resilver? What happens when we lose it? And that way we're not critical. They're hard tests to do because they take so much time.
Yeah, I had to do it for a customer a while back, and yeah, it definitely took a lot of time. A lot of it is waiting time, but still like having to maintain or monitor it. But yeah, once you start getting up around 12, 13, 14, I just remember seeing the exponential growth of
Resilver time was just crazy as the VDEV size started to grow. But no, the tuning of ZFS especially, man, like
it's got so many parameters and so much hidden potential. I find whether it's something as simple as matching your record size to your workload, and like you know what I mean. Like we did a video actually with the president and co-founder Doug Milburn and myself. Just shot a video for HomeLab 15, and we were doing video editing off the HomeLab 15, and we had a local NVMe, right, and we loaded a project up, and then we loaded up the same project on the 15 HD. They're mirrored VDEV, so you know, a bunch of mirrors, but still after everything gets warmed up into cache in the ZFS ARC,
literally the experience is nearly identical to the local NVMe because the ARC is just so powerful, right? So it's really cool how ZFS has a lot of stuff to give.
Well, and I've complained about this. There's some Linux bugs where they're kind of specific to if you're using the lower end, like the Atom processor, it drops down to single thread when you pull data into the ARC, only if the drives are encrypted, because it doesn't properly multi-thread to load up the ARC. So specifically, I noticed this because I have an Atom system that I'm running on for my video editing. So I thought, man, this is really stuttery a lot with my 4K video editing, and I have a really fast, everything's fast. I got a 10 gig connection, and I'm not saturating the connection, but then it goes away, and I just say, oh, it's fixed, because once it decodes it's unencrypted in the ARC, and it works. So it was a really hard problem to find. I had to write some scripts to be able to reproduce it, to flush out the ARC, create it, and I realized if all I had to do was move my videos eventually end up in YouTube anyways, so I don't mind that those are unencrypted. So I have an unencrypted VDEV that's just for the video
off
files.
Like a scratch,
Yeah, because I don't, because the Atom processor you can handle the 10 gig, it can handle the speed of delivery. It just can't handle if it's encrypted. So there's always those little nuances you find in alignment. And once again, just didn't really think about it because I could always transfer it 10 gigs. So I thought that was enough.
So that was enough, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, because you're keeping your ZFS VDEVs are encrypted, so it's unencrypting them on the fly when it's not warmed up in the ARC. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I've never used a CPU of that power performance with ZFS, but makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's just the way that the company shipped them. They shipped them all with Atom processors in their boxes, and I thought that, I guess they probably thought it was fine too.
Right.
In
most cases,
it's fine, and it's fine if you use BSD. This is a Linux bug, not a BSD bug.
That is interesting.
So it is a very niche kind of bug that only occurs in Linux, and there's some reason it has something to do with memory slab tables. I found a thread in one of the discussions. I don't know if it was Linus, someone was commenting on it, like Torvalds, but it was like, okay, this is way above my pay grade. Now they're to the point of they're talking about memory slabs, and I'm like, I give up. All I say is it doesn't work right.
Yeah.
It's a collision problem with this, and it doesn't. FreeBSD does things differently, so it doesn't affect FreeBSD.
I didn't know you could get much higher of a pay grade than Linus Torvalds, but
oh no, he was saying that, not Torvalds.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's just about my pay grade.
Oh, okay.
Once the really smart people started commenting on it, I can't explain exactly
Linus
why
said
it doesn't
that.
work.
I was like, oh god.
Yeah. once the kernel programmer people are poking at it, going, this is hard because of this. Well, if it's hard for you, I'm gonna quit reading.
I'm gonna bow out respectfully. That's too funny.
Know your limits.
Know your limits.
Well, this has been great. We got anything else we want to talk about?
No, we're good on our end.
I like the war stories idea a lot.
We got to do it.
I should have prepared more for it. There's so many of them we all have working in tech. You know, that one you said right there was, it's not just lesson learned, it's how we learn from it as a group, because that I've seen people do that where they didn't understand what a queue depth is and stuff like that. And they're like, no, if you start using these, this is where it's going to fall over.
Yep.
You know, people say, matter of fact, I was talking to, and I met him through you guys, and we're going to work on some videos together, Mr. Nagy, and his amazing amount of knowledge on there. He said something I thought was really interesting when we were talking about I think it was the storage test from Backblaze, and they're really good. But he also pointed out something, and it turned my mind a little bit on it. And he says they have the best results of the drive usage based on how they use them, not how you use them. So while there's a lot of good information there, it is only based on their use case of it. And I thought that was just kind of really interesting. And he started breaking down some of the nuance. So, and I told him, I said, hold that thought. I said, we got to hit record, because me and him, we were just wanted to have an intro video about what we're going to record. We ended up breaking down like 5 separate videos we might make out of this. And he really went into a lot of fun detail of how you should look at these things. And it's not that that's wrong, but it's the Backblaze people have their chassis,
that's their data.
environment.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how they do it. So their use case means these drives work this way for them. That is a completely different use case if you're talking about putting a single drive in a single computer. That's not the matching use case. So you have to always break those down to add more context to it. And this is hard drives are complicated.
I've learned that at the lowest level, hard drives are pretty much magic. That's what I kept saying during the Creator Summit when Alan would, after he would do his talk, Mr. Nagel. Like at that level, it is literally, you can't tell the difference from magic.
I know, and I do take a little offense when people, spinning Rust is dead and I hate it. No, give them the respect that they deserve. They're not as fast as NVMe's, but
especially like Hammer and stuff, like all these new. Oh my God,
it's stuff they can do. It's amazing how well they work.
Yeah, exactly.
And from an energy consumption standpoint, it turns out once you start scaling this, the NVMe's and the SSDs actually have some different power profiles than a already established spinning Rust. So you can't just say, like, the assumption might be, oh, these solid, there's no moving parts, they must use less electricity. Well, it turns out there's a lot more complicated than that. And storage performance over time, once you start using triple cell, now you have an entire, how it has to reread to restack the cells. Now you have a whole nother really deep dive you can do of the performance looks great until you reach 2/3 of the drive being full, and it has to triple read everything for that final third to fill up. Now it's really slow performance. Based on the first third, it was really high performance. There's just nuances in there that go deep.
And that's it. The nuance is what kills you, right? Like, just even playing with NVMe drives, like hard drives they're just understood. They're stable. Like, you get a new rev of them, and there's some slight difference of them. Surprise, surprise, they get bigger. They actually pull less power. I know. Like, just the way they pack it in, they're getting crazy good at that. But, like, just little things of, I don't know, I got a little hack. I know that I can drop a SCSI disk out of a system with a command. That doesn't exist in NVMe. And that screwed over a script I wanted to write that does something. And it's just, and exactly what you said is like, oh, it's an SSD. Oh, here's an SSD 2 years later. It must be the exact same thing. No. It's a whole different architecture of the cells underneath. Yeah, the power profile might be different. It takes away that, like, safe assumption where your hard drives are hard drives, man. They just pretty much work, right? But anyway.
No, that's true.
It's going to take a new storage that we haven't seen yet. Like, what will kill spinning Rust will probably be the same thing that kills the NVMe's and SSDs. There's going to be a technology that comes that makes both of those look obsolete. So it's not, I still look at them as cohabitative to each other, but there's going to be something that we haven't seen yet, and that's what will replace it. It's this new way we do things that makes some of the other stuff look archaic.
It's funny how good we are at humans at being like, we figured it all out. NVMe's will ruin everything. We'll never figure anything out again. There's a funny little anecdote. I think it's true. I've convinced myself it's true. That around the turn of the century, all the physicists got together before they really figured out quantum, and they were just like, "What are we going to do? We figured it all out.
We got a theory of everything."
And then, like, but it's like it's such a common thing where, like, we've got it all figured out, and then yet again something comes and destroys it. So you're exactly right. That's like, what's going to kill spinning Rust? We don't know yet. We haven't figured it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But talking about
the
the
greatest
power
scientific moments aren't eureka moments. They're the that's interesting. I didn't expect that moments.
You got it.
Yeah, exactly. You get sideswiped with what you would expect is going to happen. But the power too, like you said, like what are the NVMe's that we're working with? They're rated for like 25 watts or 22 watts. They're not drawing that on our server, but they can draw.
They can, and there's a whole thing where you can give it different power levels of what they can go to, use more, use less, and
it's crazy because what's a hard drive? We're at like 5.5 watts, something like that, maybe.
12, 5. Yeah,
12
around that.
volts at whatever. Yep. So like the NVMe's and the SSDs thinking that they're gonna draw less power.
The other thing that gets you is power distribution. Because for the longest time, hard drives, the stuff that kills you is you need good 12-volt power and good current on the 12-volt because they can spin up all the motors and handle all that. 5-volt
5 volts, yeah.
supply, like traditionally what you'll see, and you see it a lot with consumer power supplies too, is you'll get really high 12-volt current.
Yep.
Because you need for GPUs,
PCI
you need for this,
Express,
all this
CPU,
stuff,
yep,
and they'll
exactly.
give you just enough 5-volt, right? But you go put a bunch of SSDs into things, they don't use 12 anymore.
No,
they want all
exactly.
5s.
All 5.
Okay, now go find me a power supply you can buy relatively off the shelf that switches those two
handle that
things.
much.
It's hard, man. It's hard. So even like little nuanced stuff like that, where it's just like, oh yeah, well it draws less power, yeah, but it's all on the 5-volt line, and that completely changes the power distribution architecture. So there's
Yep, there's a whole lot. It's funny. We've been talking to a vendor that's been dabbling with the idea of getting into hardware. They're a software vendor, and it's just like a hardware game is hard, man. There is a lot to know, and a lot of things you have to account for.
And keeping the quality up and making sure your supply lines are good, that you don't have a bad run of product.
Yep.
You know, I deal with this a lot where I review a product, but someone's like, oh, 5 years ago they had a bad run. I'm like, yeah, I'm aware. 5 years ago they had a bad run of power supplies.
Yeah, it happens.
That company, I think they have survived it. They seem to still be in business. And
Exactly.
I think they learned that not to make the power supply the way they did 5 years ago. Like,
No, it's funny you say that because you see that on like comments all the time where people like they have an anecdotal experience of like, oh, I had a bad experience with Corsair. They're the worst. It's like,
Right.
well, you know, they're still in business and there's millions of people that use them and love it. Maybe you just had a really bad experience with a Corsair power supply or a Corsair whatever, right?
and often what it is it gets screwed because the bad stuff happens. We'll call it sometimes you spilling soup on someone.
Yeah.
But if you go and you clean it up and you give them the service
Great
that they
point.
need, right? Because we can't sit here and say everything's perfect always.
Exactly.
You know, we strive for that.
Yep.
But that's not always what happens. And that's where you come in, you give good service and you support. So I find those people who usually go, I hate that company sucks.
They had bad
They
experience.
had a bad
after it broke.
experience, and then trying to fix that problem
Was even
or
worse.
it was like no one had even talked to you.
Yeah.
That I can stand by that. That is the
100%.
most frustrating thing in the world.
Yep. And that's exactly. And that's like literally the antithesis of us. And that's one thing that's so cool is like you said, nothing is always going to be perfect. We're going to have some experiences where it's less than stellar at the gate, but it's what you do next that really matters.
oh yeah, that's it, it's your response to the adversity, the problem that was occurred on there. And I'll say this now because the part of this project with the 100 gig networking and everything else, I'm going to comment, you were the easiest part of this project, even from like the salespeople are like, oh, the 45 drives team, because with the merger to CNWR people, we introduced them to 45 drives. They love it. They're like, this is cool. They bought some Storinators, they bought all kinds of fun stuff, but they actually really like how smooth the sale process is, because some of the other corporate vendors that are from large publicly traded companies, spending money with them's hard. Like, we have the budget, we have it approved, we'd like to buy it. We need you to have 2 more sales meetings. No, seriously, we even know what model product we'd like to buy. We'd like to give $50,000 to you to buy your switches.
Let me give you the money.
I've already got sign off. Boss said I could spend money. Do you want it? Well,
yeah. They just, we have a certification test. We like one of your people to take. I'm like, really? Well, okay, but when can we schedule it? Well, we're kind of booked up. I'm like, how can I buy these things? Like, why is this hard?
That's
No,
why.
and I think some of it too is it comes from bad experiences of like, oh, we didn't educate our customer enough before they bought it, or we didn't set expectation right.
Yep.
Then it was negative and all that. Let's go and kill the process, because that way we won't ever have that happen to us again. But if you are overbearing with that, you get exactly what we just described here, and you just like, just let me buy what the hell I want. And that's what another thing we try to do with our sales process here, where if the people do need that hand holding, not in the bad way, in the way that we'll bring you with us. Right now, we want to help with that. Or if you want to come in and say, I already know my model number, everything, give me a read order of that. Great.
Yep.
I'm working on buying some pretty beefy PCI 4 generation system validation software, right? Some stuff for our engineers to use. Yep. And it's the same thing. We've got one company who's really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And some of the other ones, it's like pulling teeth getting any info out of them. And I really even hit them with the, we want to move pretty fast on this. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll get around to it.
We have money.
Anyway, it's but in our case, we love the guidance. We love the help on that.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of both. But yeah, that's where that comes from. I find it's always an overcorrection of things that didn't go well.
Yeah.
I think that's what you got to keep in mind as you develop those services.
Yeah, lots to think about.
Yeah, lots to think about.
That's why I don't want to run the company no more.
Yeah, right. It's funny.
Because some corporate person was tasked with this, and now he's getting heat for making it too hard. He's like, it was too easy before. Now it's too hard. Now I got to do this again.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of why Linus stepped down from CEO. He's like, I just want to do the fun things of Linus Tech Tips. I don't want to be the CEO anymore.
Yes,
So, yeah,
I completely. It's funny because he announced his for July 1st, and I did too. And like, hey, good coincidence.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. And it's I don't blame him at all. Like I watched where his position was on it, and it's you're trying to. I always say I'm optimizing for happiness. Like you double down on the business stuff, and you try to figure out how to monetize everything because you're trying to make the most money. At some point, when I'm doing more money, like, once my bills are paid, I kind of just want to play with technology and enjoy myself and have fun. Right. I'm not trying to, I don't have an exotic car collection, nor do I plan to. So I don't have any big ticket things, and I didn't really want a yacht. So
yeah.
Those mega ships. Like I seen one of the big guys. I don't know if it was maybe it was Microsoft again. They were talking. I seen their yacht list come up. I'm like, why does this even like they have a smaller yacht that launches out of their bigger yacht because they spent $40 million. I'm like, why do they have that?
My biggest toy is my 4090 until the 5090 comes in.
Yeah, there you go. That's a way more fun toy.
Yeah. But again, I'd say congratulations, commend on that, because that is the dream, right? Like you said, in the past, you loved it. You worked 90 hours a week, but you can't do that forever. There's another point of life. You want to go and do new things. And why do we do the things we do? Well, yeah, money, because it enables the lifestyles we want to live. But we want to enjoy what we're doing. That's right. And the dream, everyone wants to work for themselves, and then you work for yourselves. And then if you're able to kind of exit out of that and still be do the fun stuff you love. Yep. That's a rare experience. So to that, I really will say congrats.
Oh yeah,
like you're the dream there.
Yeah, and the business journey's been fun. Like from when I did all the fun stuff at the trucking company and working on patents. In between, I actually had an electronics repair company. We fixed TVs and VCRs. So that was a few years where I co-owned that with someone else. And then so it's been me pursuing different fun ideas, stuff I want to play with. That's where my electronics background comes from. I wanted to explore that. And having a repair shop's a fun way to do it. It's also a fun way to learn how not to do it.
Yeah, it's funny. I do the exact same thing. Like every holidays without fail, from word of mouth, I get 6 to 10 computer builds that I have to do for kids for Christmas, and I don't have a company, but just people reach out. I'm like happy to do it. I love it.
Santa Claus over here, right? You go deliver it to them and everything. Ho ho ho.
Sometimes I actually do hold it until Christmas, so then they can come pick it up and deliver it on Christmas morning.
That's cool.
But I don't dress up. No, that's extra. That's extra.
That's extra.
Yeah.
There are limits here.
Cool, man. Well, this was great.
It's been great, guys.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really happy to have you. It was cool to hear more about your origin story and kind of everything that's gone on up until this point.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, we don't have a smooth exit yet, so we'll end again with thank you. That's the end of episode 2.
Yep.
That's what's spinning today.
Yep. We'll be back next week with...
I don't think it's next week.
Next week, the week after.
We will be back again.
We'll be back again, and we've got another really cool guest, but we won't say who, I guess, yet.
Awesome.
17th?
Yep.
October 17th. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Tom.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks again.